Wilson Morales from Black Women TV, talking to writer-director Charles Murray and actor Michael Ealy as a producer regarding the film The Devil You Know. You talked earlier about how it took over 5 years to get this made. What was the final straw that led you and Lionsgate to put it up and making it happen and playing in theaters now?
Omar and I had been pushing this thing. It was actually 8 years, and the landscape changed. When we started, we kept hearing Black dramas don't sell, or they would offer. We were getting offers of like $500,000, which I have no problems with in terms of how I make movies, because 2 of my movies have been under $500,000. But considering the talent that was attached, I was like, that's kind of disrespectful. But between the time that we were initially pitching it to getting the financing at last, I gotta say thank you, 50 Cent, because in creating the Power universe and having Omar in that universe, Lionsgate was connected to Stars. Stars saw the potential, Lionsgate saw the potential, and they gave us the budget. They finally gave us the budget once we added this beautiful man that's also on the screen.
So, Michael, were you always on board, or did you come on board to act as well as produce?
No, I was not always on board. Charles and I met and we were talking about other projects. And then he was like, I got something I want you to read. And, that's really how it started. I read it, I felt it. I said, give me a couple days to process it. And then, from that point on, I hit him up and I was like, look, I want to be more involved than just being in it. You know what I mean? Like, this is something that I believe in. I want to be, kind of involved. And he was more than welcoming and accommodating and doing that. And then we spent all this time, making the movie, and I learned so much from him. Like, he would let me, I was there on days I wasn't shooting. I was able to kind of, pick his brain about why are we doing this way, and da 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 da. And it was fantastic, and he taught me a lot about independent financing and all of the things. So it was a great opportunity for me to learn as much as I could. And, Charles is just, he's just a force of nature in that way. So I feel like I learned from one of the best.
The thing about this movie is that there's no time frame. This could be 10 years ago. This could have been 5 years ago. So you can play this at any given time without being dated. Was that purposely done?
Yeah,
Charles?
I mean, if you go back to what is my film school, it starts with movies that I watched on television. Mm. And when I think about the movies that matter most to me, like here's an example. One of my favorite movies is Singing in the Rain. And that movie's timeless to me. It feels like every time I watch it, it could be something that happens right now. So I feel like, especially considering the lineage and the history of Black films, a lot of times they're pushed because they're timely, and then they feel like they're dated. And I wanted to make a movie where if you watch it in 10 years, 20 years, or whatever, you just start to focus on the story and the characters, and it doesn't matter if it was 10 years or 20 years ago.
Now, the story can be taken in different ways. Obviously the way it begins, there's a murder, and then we have our suspects. And then it's a question of whether or not they did it, and will they get caught? It's almost like a robbery, like no one gets away with a heist all the time. Mm-hmm. And so then you have the question, this is a Black family, and judging from the trailers, without giving it away, you have Omar's character, emotionally involved, how much did you want to play the emotional aspect as opposed to the story itself of a white family being killed?
In white movies, they don't play it up that white families got killed.
Well,
you know what I'm saying? So crime is crime is crime is crime. When we start we have to break narratives. We have to make it where if we're telling a film, a story about a criminal activity, we address in the movie the racial aspects of it, but very briefly.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't see, like, Morgan Freeman was in Gone Baby Gone, right? And it eventually is revealed that the daughter wasn't kidnapped. The daughter was taken to Morgan Freeman. Ben Affleck directed it. Casey Affleck was in it. Ed Harris was in it. It wasn't Amy Madigan.
Amy Smart.
Thank you. At a certain point, the reveal is that Morgan Freeman has that child. At no point does someone say, what is your black ass doing with this white child? So why should we cater to that thought when we're always talking about, look at our movies as movies, right? The narrative we keep trying to push is that we don't get to have the full breadth of storytelling that the dominant culture has. And the only way we get to do that is if we say, all right, well, we're going to take that cap off ourselves. So yeah, they killed white folk, but if there had been black folk in that house, they would have killed them too. If there had been Asian folks in that house, they'd have killed them. Mm-hmm. They were out for greed. Greed has no color.
Yes, greed definitely has no color. Michael, you're playing the role of a cop. With all actors, I always tell them, how much emphasis do you have in the roles that you play? Like, is this a role? Do you do research? Do you know cops? Do you talk to cops about investigating cases, before you tack on the role?
So Joe McDonald, in short, was kind of, the way Charles had him written, he was older and he was, on the verge of retirement. And in a lot of ways, he felt like the law enforcement presence in the film. And so one of the things that I spoke to Charles about was how do we make him more interesting? How do we make him more human? And I was expressing to Charles that there's, in law enforcement, I often wonder how Black detectives feel either arresting and incarcerating Black men or Black women, or how they feel in, looking at constant the death of their own people. And so it was traumatic in that way. What does that do to a person long term, and even short term? Because Joe hasn't been a detective more than 10 years. He's been on the force 15, but he's only been a detective for maybe 10 years, and he's ready to retire, And I think oftentimes in television and film, we just see a cop being kind of one-dimensional. Like you either broke the law or you didn't. And we don't get into their psyche. We don't get into their trauma. We don't really try to understand them, because oftentimes we just use them as a device of law enforcement, right? But I was like, let's play with this. And Charles was like, let's play with this. And so he starts asking questions. I start asking questions. And next thing I know, he's writing, and it's just beautiful. And all of a sudden, this character becomes so much more fully developed. And I got to give Charles his credit, because he kept that part in the movie. This is the beautiful thing about doing an independent like this, because 9 times out of 10, you can have the same conversation with the studio, and they're going to cut that part out. They'll let you shoot it. They'll let you think you developed it. Great. And then they're going to cut it out. And the beautiful thing is that he kept it in the movie, and I'm getting questions about it because people are noticing, that this guy sees himself as human, not blue, but human. And it affects him when he sees this tight-knit family that reminds him, may or may not remind him of his own family. And so there's a different approach to how you investigate this particular case.
I want to say, as many films that I've watched, it's rare to see four brothers in a film in terms of characters. You see sisters, not that many brothers, so that was interesting to see, four guys, brothers, loving family initially, that's a big cast, and I know a lot of those faces. So that just tells me there's a lot of respect for you, no matter what the role called for, that they're willing to be a part of this. Everybody from the people you have as a family members to Jeff Lowe, who I talked to you earlier about, and I'm probably the only one who will recognize it. Do you, Michael, do you know who Jeff Lowe was?
Mm-hmm.
And so I go, how'd you get Jeff in there? And then obviously you got, guys who have worked on your other projects before.
Jeff was my boss when I was on Luke Cage with Theo, and we developed a friendship while I was there. I'm a huge Batman fan, and so Dark Victory, Long Halloween, and some of the other stuff he's done with Tim Sale, Hush, which he's done with Jim Lee, kind of like that opened the door, talking to him about those books, spending time with him on set for Runaways opened the door. I didn't work on it, but I went to visit when a friend of mine was directing. And so now that Marvel is out of his hands and in Jeff in Kevin Feige's hands, our friendship kept going. So when I told him that I was making the film, I said, you kind of ham it up. Can you act? And he was like, yeah, what you got? And I sent him the script, and we had a long conversation about it. And he was like, just tell me where to show up, and I'm there. And that kind of, now he thinks that every film that I make going forward, he has to be in it. So, I told him we'd have to negotiate that. But with everybody who comes from, growing up, again, this all comes to growing up. You look at a James Cagney film and you see Pat O'Brien, and you see a stable of people that he had been in other movies with. You look at Preston Sturges, you look at Billy Wilder, you would see people returning and floating through, and you saw filmmakers building a repertory company. Making movies is hard. Even when everything is clicking, you're still fighting time and money. You want to invite people in because you have an emotional connection with them. I think, and I told Omar that by the time we got the film made, we were friends. And that was better for the film. Michael coming in, our conversation started, like he said, on a different project. I'm writing this pilot, and hopefully it'll become a limited series where I want him to play Malcolm X. But it was our conversations post our initial meeting that made me go, I've always been a fan of this brother. And now I think he and I are developing a friendship, and I want to work with him. I've wanted to work. Things Never Said was, that was when I first met Michael. And that was back in 2000. When was Their Eyes Were Watching God? No, I met Michael on Their Eyes Were Watching God. And it was a very brief meeting because I wanted him in that role. And I've been a fan of his since then. People, I know what people focus on, but I swear to you, the ease with which he makes his roles seem is a very, very talented, thoughtful man who puts in a lot of work. And I wanted to work with him. And so when he said yes, I believe we'll both say that in the days that we were shooting, we talked about everything. It was not just about, I need you to do this, or, hey, I'm not understanding the scene, or whatever. And like he said, he was coming back on days that he wasn't there. So the people who end up in if you want to call it a repertory company in terms of people that I want to go to, I want people that I can get along with who are very amazing at their craft, because there's a lot of people who are very amazing at their craft that make even the longest shoot seem longer, and I'm not interested in that.
Well, gentlemen, you've put together a good film. I've done what I can to market this, to let people know that not only are you directing it and you starred in it, but just I did a collage with the rest of the cast because all of those faces has an audience. Keep it going, Charles. I definitely want to see more work from you as a director because we need more directors out there. Michael, you're everywhere. I just saw you this morning on the episode of Black Lady Sketch Show, which is not out yet. You know, you're just taking yes work, but making good quality work. So, gentlemen, keep it going wherever you guys are at. Stay safe. And as always, and hopefully sooner, we'll talk later.
And we appreciate your support, dude, because you put in a lot of work to keep us out there in a very respectful manner. So
Awareness
thank
is
you.
key. Awareness is key. Take care, folks.
Thanks.
Good to see